First panel discussion of the morning. It is Activating Americans, what works and what doesn't. Our moderator this morning is Bob Perkowitz. He is founder and president of ecoAmerica, a nonprofit that starts with people and uses consumer research and strategic partnerships to build institutional leadership for climate and sustainability solutions in America. Bob?
Thank you so much, and I want to start off by thanking Chip and Sally and all the AREDAY team for being such pros and putting on such a great conference. Thanks so much. And I also have to do a little advertisement here for Divest Invest. There's a booth out there with a couple of iPads, and if you have not gone out and pledged for Divest Invest, it's a strangely empowering thing to do, and you should all go out there and pledge to Divest Invest before you leave. And if you don't have it, if you go online and you want to do it at the divestinvest.org website, do divestinvest.org/AREDAY so we can give credit to the people here who put this together. So that's that. All right. So the panel here is on activating Americans on climate change. The panel here today is about activating Americans on climate change. We have David's perspective, and it's a good one, and David's a very good friend of mine. We have a couple of other perspectives at the table, too, and it'll be interesting to hear them. I am 100% certain that we can solve climate change in this country and on this planet. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind. What we need to do is build the public support and the political will, and I think all of us would agree on that. I am also 100% certain that we can build the public support and the political will we need to solve climate change. We just need to shift our priorities, which is what David is urging us to do. We need to build the base of support, not just activate the base of support. We don't need to just keep talking to ourselves. We need some new strategies and we need some new tactics. So we've got a great panel here to give you some ideas. And I'm going to introduce him right now. This is actually Ed Maybach from George Mason University. Ed was delayed last night on a plane flight. He'll be walking in the door here at 9 o'clock. Ed is head of the Center for Climate Communications at George Mason University and a distinguished professor of communications there. Ed has given David his thoughts, and David will channel Ed.
I have his notes.
I have his notes. Next to David is Celinda Lake. Celinda is president of Lake Research Partners. Many of you have probably heard of them, one of the most respected polling organizations in America. We at ecoAmerica use Lake Research not just for polling, but also for all of our communications research. They do a fantastic job. And then on the far left is Cheri Anderson. Cheri is from an organization called Strategic Business Insights. They do corporate polling on values and strategies. We use them because if you just poll people and talk to them about climate change, that's all you know about them. And if you want to reach out to them, you better know what else they care about. And SBI with the VALS platform enables us to connect to other people's values and target them much more effectively. I'm going to go first with a couple of slides here. Okay, I'm from an organization called ecoAmerica. Our theory is that we have to engage mainstream Americans in climate. So what we do is we go, rather than create a separate organization, we go out to the largest national organizations in America in faith and health and other sectors, and we help them do climate programs. So right now, for instance, at the American Public Health Association, if you went to their website 6 months ago, there was a couple blog posts on climate change. Now the American Public Health Association has it listed as their second most important public health issue, and there's all kinds of resources on there. Same thing with different churches and denominations, but we use mainstream partners for leverage and scale. We also do an incredible amount of research, and the people on this stage help us with that. The American Climate Values series that we do with SBI connects values. With Columbia University, we do strategic communications guide on climate. That guide there consolidates all the academic research that's been done on climate communications in the past 5 years. So if you want to know about overcoming objections or anything, you can go there. With Celinda, we do focus group style tests. We don't take our own messages and regurgitate them. We listen to people and we frame messages and communications that's from their own words that they can really relate to. So ecoAmerica does a lot of research. And what we've learned is basically there's been 3 generations of messaging on climate. The first thing is Armageddon, that we're all going to die. Depending upon how you count on it, about 11. That was good.
But only 16% of Americans agree.
Yeah, and then we all do then we all shifted when Obama came to office. Says you can't call it climate change. It's all about economic benefits, health benefits, all that other kind of stuff. And Celinda will tell you, green jobs are great, but I don't know anybody's going to get one, so it's not really relevant. And what we're changing to, what we're finding from working with the AME Church and the American Academy of Pediatricians, if you want to reach them, you have to talk about climate change in their terms. So what that looks like is, this is, for instance, we work with San Diego a little bit. They did this themselves, but this is their former, San Diego's going 100% climate neutral. This is their old brochure. In 2050, if the trends continue, we're all going to die. About 2 years ago, they shifted to San Diego 2050 is calling How Will We Answer? Every page has people on it with real solutions, real facts about what's going on in climate change. It's got a Republican mayor in San Diego. They are leading this nation on climate change by having the right framing and messaging. They don't talk about we're all going to die. This is a program we're doing, Path to Positive in Los Angeles, to engage Los Angeles. We're getting hundreds of leaders and organizations in LA to get critical mass in LA, and we do it with people from LA, LA-centric messaging. Everything about a program on LA and climate change is on LA. This is the APHA, American Public Health Association. You hear about allergies and asthma, children's health, community health, mental health. Climate change changes everything, and the APHA is telling all its members in all of their 60 specialties how climate change is going to impact whatever they care about. This is the AME Church. They passed their leadership group a month ago or so. We've worked with them for a long time on this. This is their resolution on climate change, which hopefully they're doing their 200th anniversary General Assembly in about 2 weeks in Philadelphia, and they're going to put this up to pass. But if you read it, it says, millions of Americans live next to polluting coal plants. 39% are low-income communities. It hurts children. It hurts the elderly. It hurts our faithful in Africa. It hurts our faithful in the Caribbean. There's nothing about creation, care, or stewardship here. This is all about the people in the AME churches and what's going to happen to them. It relates directly to them. We did a forum last Friday in DC with Latinos, with a whole bunch of partners, and the messages that we give to them is, this is Wilmington, suburb of Long Beach, right next to the largest refinery out there. They have 4 times more, their kids have 4 times more asthma and twice as likely to die. We show them that 78% of American agricultural workers are Hispanic Americans, and when there's droughts, they lose their jobs. When there's, they suffer the heat, they are impacted by climate change. When Nevada stops doing their feed-in tariffs and they eliminate the solar panel industry in that state, there are 200,000 people working on solar energy in America. 40,000 of them are Hispanic. Who lost the jobs when they did that? This is Miami, daylight flooding. We know that, and we know that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars with flooding solutions, building these trenches and pumps and everything. Guess which neighborhoods get those services? It's not where the Hispanics live. So we go through this, and when they come out of that meeting, they understand that climate change is an issue that's important to Hispanics, and we have to do that with every group. We also do this, these are other reports on health and philanthropy and mental health and philanthropy. If you go to these, the opening page, there's 1 page on climate change, and there's 36 pages on the mental health aspects of climate change. If you're a mental health professional, what do you want to hear? So our message is connect with mainstream Americans and do it with what they really care about. And that's what ecoAmerica does. Now I'm going to, since David went first, I'm going to start with Celinda, and we'll hear Celinda's story. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Bob, very much for your leadership. It's been a great privilege working with you. And I really encourage, one of the products that I'm terrifically excited about was the message toolkit that we worked on with Bob, and that I would encourage all of you to get, because it reinforces, David, a lot of the principles that you're emphasizing. So my topic is the climate and the 2016 election. And yeah, indeed, whoever was laughing, yes, the 2016 election, you either laugh or you cry or you do both. This is the vote. But one thing I would say is right after a huge division emerged between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, now the race is closing again. You can imagine, I think, a record volatile campaign, a record negative campaign. So one, buy a satellite dish if you're in a battleground state. But two, I think it is a time where people will be looking for solutions, because they're going to expect no solutions from their political system, and they're going to be particularly pessimistic about the election. And it is a time where people are going to want to hear about solutions, not problems. One of the most important things about the climate change messaging, and David mentioned this already, is people do not want to buy a chair on the Titanic. They do not want to inherit your problem. They already got problems of their own. What they want to know is something that they can do something about. They also do not want to divide America. And climate change is perceived to be a very divisive issue. So women in particular, who would be kind of the core, you would think, of support and moving on climate change, are very resistant to it, because they don't want to get in an argument. They don't want to fight about climate change. They won't forward it on their social media networks because they perceive it to be inherently divisive. This is the presidential election. Talk about divisions. The gender gap, the difference between men and women's voting, is at a record high. In fact, the biggest gender gap is actually, right now, that we've ever seen, is between married men and married women. Married men are voting 57 to 67% for Donald Trump. Married women are voting 6 to 12 points for Hillary Clinton. That's the biggest gap we've ever had. 73% of married men, by the way, say confidently, I vote the same way as my spouse. 49% of married women say I vote the same way as my spouse. One of the things that we haven't seen in climate change is that gender gap emerge. We have not seen women mobilized to have their own point of view and to really take their own stand and get their own information on climate change. So many, many women report that the information that they're getting on climate change, they get from the men in their lives, which moves their information networks over to a more right-wing perspective. Age making a huge difference in the presidential election, a huge difference on this issue as well. Younger people much, much more engaged, young parents, a huge constituency. David mentioned this already. Economy, security, the deficit, healthcare dominating. Only 8% of Americans say that climate change is one of the top two issues that they want the federal government to do something about. This, and we can't scare people straight. We can't tell them that it is their last day on Earth and hope that they'll come to our march. And realistically, think about it for a moment. If it were honest to God, the last day on Earth, would you be at this meeting? No. You'd be having sex with your partner. You'd be on the mountain. You'd be trying heroin. I don't know, but you wouldn't be in this room, right? If it were honest to God, the last day on Earth. And that's how American public feels as well. What are some of the messages that work? Well, people believe that clean energy can generate tremendous economic benefits. People believe it can save money in the long run, and people believe that it can create jobs. And one of the constituencies, by the way, that is very undermobilized on this dimension is Latino voters, who are very oriented toward climate change, particularly when it comes to health of children, and very interested in the economic benefits, but are worried about getting the cash to enter into the system. And there's some folks out here who have some very creative solutions in terms of that. Using the word pollution. Now, I know all of the scientists will say that the word pollution is incorrect. Well, we can be correct or we can move people. Pollution is very, very powerful to people. It's a very hot word. It increases the motivation to take action dramatically. It also connects people very readily to the health messages and the children's messages. So pollution, a very, very strong concept. Also, in the toolkit that we developed with ecoAmerica, or we were ecoAmerica was the lead, we were just one of the many partners in that, damage to the climate and preventing damage to the climate was very, very moving. People thought climate change, oh yeah, you hear climate change, blah, blah, blah. Damage to the climate, whoa, damage, maybe we ought to act on that right away. That, you know, that has an urgency to it that frankly climate change does not. Here is an example of one of our best testing messages and why that message works. And the message was, we all want to live in the best place for our families. And communities across America are learning that smart investments in sustainable energy like wind and solar provide a healthier environment, attract new business, create jobs, and build stronger communities. We see climate change, and we can't just wait for politicians in Washington to solve our problems. Right now in our own communities, we can reduce pollution, improve our health, and create new jobs that can't be outsourced by producing and using clean energy. We can protect our cities by leaving dirty fuels behind. A community with sustainable solutions is the place I want to call home. Several things about this message. It's solidly values-oriented, which is part of the trademark of successful messaging that ecoAmerica has demonstrated, that VALS has found. In this case, the value of family and community, both, by the way, are values to people. People are also turning against the national scene and moving down to their communities, but they often think that there's nothing they can do in their community about climate change because they think it's too big an issue. It's due to China. What difference does it make what we do at our community? This routes it in efficacy. It messages to inevitability. It doesn't start with the negative, it starts with the positive. It starts with aspiration. People are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they don't want to hear all of the problems out there. They want to hear something that they can do something about. It has a clear call to action, a clear focus on benefits from that action that are at the individual and community level. And by the way, we helped develop this work with Anat Shanker-Asario, who wrote a terrific book on the economy, by the way, which she entitled Don't Buy It. Of course, I would advise you to buy it, and don't steal it. Speaking of our heritage, do buy the book. A second message that worked, health, which is a major, major way to mobilize women. It is also a way to empower women. 80% of the decision makers in this country on health are women. This is the one issue where men say, the women in my life tell me what to do. Now, there may be many other areas where the women tell the men what to do, but this is the one where they admit it. So here's the message, talks about our family's health, talks about real lived experience, focuses on solutions, and has an aspirational call to action. Those messages all move people significantly in terms of willingness to take action and in terms of willingness to, intensity of willingness to take action. It's actually less agreement that we have problems with. It's not agreement that's such a problem for us. It's intensity that's a problem for us. And these messages move people in terms of taking immediate action. So let me stop there, and I look forward to others' comments and questions.
Thanks, Celinda. That's spectacular. Cheri?
Okay. All right. Good morning. My name is Cheri Anderson, and I'm the technical director of the VALS program, which stands for Values and Lifestyles. And we've been privileged to work with Bob and ecoAmerica in helping to diagnose what's in the way with opening up the hearts and minds to the rest of America about climate change. So as it happens, responses to survey questionnaire items, for example, big business exaggerates the difficulty of meeting pollution standards, or trying to be green is a difficult chore, or maybe every time I go to the gas station or every time I fill up my car, some of the money goes to people who want to hurt us. Those kinds of responses give us really important data clues as to more general fundamental qualities of people. So basically, with the right analytical tools, we can learn a whole lot more about people than just their particular responses, let's say to green items or political items. So what I wanted to do today is say, what are the qualities of people who give ungreen responses to items, or people who are not like those of us in the room, to keep with some of the theme of what we're talking about. Lots of innovators and change leaders in this room, a lot of that activity, but now we're going to dip out and look at the sea of what we might call Joe's six-packs. So, and I want to talk about one quality in particular, and this quality is not a demographic quality. It's not something that you can easily find by saying, oh, young people and old people, or people with heavy education, not so much education, or super macho or super femme. It's not about that. It's about something a little bit more psychological or even elusive. And I'm going to talk about one quality that this quality actually is most strongly differentiates ungreen people from the rest of the adults in the country. So now I'm going to turn to a slide. By the way, there's a potted flower plant right between me and this screen, so I might have to be a little challenged to look up. Thank you. Okay. Let me introduce you to this quality of the ungreen, and I'm going to build a kind of psychological picture. So you may not get it in the first second, but hang in there, it will pay dividends. I'm talking about a quality of a person, a type of person who's basically, if you will, less social, if not totally unsocial. It's the kind of person who has a preference for what I'll call few strong ties, maybe some small group, like a spouse, a child, or a brother, instead of someone who has many weak social ties. Many people here in this conference might pre-select for people who have lots of weak ties. That's friends, quick-hit contacts, networks all over the world. We're talking about people now with few social ties. We're talking about a core psychology of people who center their lives on a few very valuable things, adverse to the, if you will, unquenchable thirst for action, excitement, surprises, give me the next thrill. That's not who they are. In fact, one of the issues is they have big disdain for that. Also talking about a kind of person who has very persistent values that I'll call them static. They're not going to change so easily, regardless of what anybody says to them. So right about now, you might be wondering, or at least I'm hoping that you're wondering, why are these people ungreen? What about the characteristics that I've shared so far kind of bring us to a place of ungreenness? Well, let me suggest a couple hypotheses. One is that if you have few strong ties, if that's your life as a small social circle or being unsocial, that really works against the socially motivated sense of, quote, we're all in this together. This sense that we're one big unit, or overall kind of, if you will, sort of kumbaya halo, doesn't really penetrate this psychology, okay? Let's hold that in mind. The other aspect of these folks is from the outside, no, actually, admittedly, they're skeptical, but they might seem a little grumpy or curmudgeon from the outside if you're not who they are. Well, that really works against jumping on any kind of bandwagon, especially one that seems to have a lot of pop culture enthusiasm to it. So we're kind of in a tough position here. So I'm going to suggest some things we can do. In fact, we might be tempted, I think I wrote in there, we might be tempted to say, from our point of view, what a bunch of antisocial cranks who are, resistant to the green movement. But what I want to suggest here today is that these could be our secret allies on a very long-term and, here's a word, sustainable basis. Let me just paint a little bit more of the problem before I get to talking points that might help out. This psychology has people who, in their lifestyle, they stand outside the context of social or cultural buzz. Why? Because it hasn't actually endured any real challenges, any hardship. It's just a lot of voice to them. It's a lot of exaggerated affinities and exaggerated hatreds and so forth. So in this regard, they have a general, if you will, disbelief and dislike in both green and brown people. These are the people who actually strongly agree that big business does exaggerate the difficulty of supporting pollution standards, but also disbelieve and disagree with that there's big exaggeration and that we need to conserve energy, that's been exaggerated as well. So what I'd like to do next is I want to suggest some talking points, some messaging strategies that begins to invite this group to consider matters. Now, the first thing I'll just tell you right out, and I think it's pretty consistent what Dave and Celinda have suggested, messages that attempt to persuade this group, bad idea. What we want to do here is we want to awaken them to what is already part of their personality. So we have to be kind of creative. We have to put ourselves in their shoes and think how they think. So I'm just going to cut right to some really, if you will, kind of just naked, raw ideas. Skip the green values. Yes. Talk about the shallowness of consumer culture, you will, the commercialization of Christmas, the surplus of clutter and over-consumption. Talk about the things that are really meaningful to them. Because with this group, they see a lot of excessive engagement with futile things that don't matter. Lots of social media, lots of buzz, stuff that doesn't really have credibility. So don't go down that particular river or canal. You know, I'm going to risk taking a short digression because maybe it'll land, maybe it won't. You notice when we talk about dreams, we all like to go and tell the person the content of our dream. This and this happened, and this sex fantasy, and this revenge fantasy, but we don't actually think about the platform, the river that the dream content runs on. We don't think about that, we just think about the content. And now we have a group of people, these ungreen, that are very suspicious about the river that the content runs on. Not so much, so yeah, they're suspicious of the content, not necessarily the river that it runs on. So let's put some different content in there. Let's talk about the shallowness of consumer culture. Okay, they're also going to be pretty suspicious of a kind of what they would perceive as indulgent, I want my cake and eat it too, yeah? Let me tell you what they're thinking. Try this on. No, cakes have to be cut in a certain way. You cut, I pick. Okay? See, this is a different kind of mindset we're talking about. Let me tell you another thing they're probably thinking. Let's face it, all these enthusiastic green people, they became SUV-owning parents. And sorry to be the foil here, but many of them did, folks. So we have to really shake down our own inventories of what green means, because statistically, it has to be a true statement, because where did the growth in the SUV category come from? Okay, so there's some hardcore. Now let me suggest some other kind of campaign ideas that may be a little softer. One is, if you have a group of people who are not particularly social, have some persistent values, kind of probably are more avoiders and like their privacy, let's appeal to the fact that, you know what, climate change intrudes on your lifestyle. Yes, when the FedEx man has to rowboat up to your front door because there's water in there, it intrudes on your lifestyle. So, here's a tagline, keep the outdoors outdoors. Yes? That might play more to their sensibilities. So keep the outdoors outdoors. Don't get intruded on. Okay. Let me try a few other talking points for the young green here. Do I have one more minute?
Keep going.
Okay. Okay, so these are more skeptical people. So guess what? Don't try to convince them not to be skeptical. Go with the flow of the river. Trust them to give expression to their skepticism. Encourage them to be skeptical of smiling faces. So this is the kind of what I call meta-level communication. So you do an ad, you do something. Consider the source. Encourage them. Who did this? Who wrote this? Yes, consider the source. Encourage them to ask, well, who benefits if it goes this way, who's really going to benefit? Now, here's the deal. They might become affronted if they find out that something they've been doing habitually, like eating a certain kind of food or driving a certain car, is actually benefiting adversaries, because they're not against seeing that there's enemies, that there's, friendly or faux sources of things. But they need to be given it from an informational point of view. So here's a little example I did. You mean I'm paying someone to do all the things I wish people would stop doing in the first place? If they are awoken to that sense, they will respond. So my example is, whole wheat hamburger buns taste just as good. So when they discover that, it turns out this way. There's no need to pay the guy to bleach the flour in the middle, okay? I'm hoping that example lands on you. It may not be the highest idea, but the thing is once they learn, like, hey, this is just as good, if not better, we don't need all these middle people in the way. Okay, so they don't value hugging a tree. They may not get the same, if you will, kind of enthusiastic joy in those kinds of activities or in participating in social causes, that kind of thing, or environmental causes, but they may be better at preserving the tree in the long run, yeah? Now I'll just leave you with a few what I call correlates. So anytime we have a particular group of people, one of the things we can do in analytics, and in Val's analytics, is look at affinities. So you would say, these people are really like the people who do this and that. So I'll give you a totally different example than this for a moment. But like, for example, we know that young millionaires are much more like people who read science fiction novels than they are like people who read biographies. So it's that kind of a logic or thinking. So now what I did is I looked at our ungreen group, our few strong ties, and I just want to share some correlates. And this is intended to just help you put some flesh on the bones of what I've already described. Strong interpersonal communication correlates. Yes, folks, I yell when I get angry. I won't demonstrate that right now. I feel uncomfortable talking with strangers, like for instance at checkout lines and so forth. I feel tense when I'm with people I don't know, skeptical of new ideas. Then we can step up to a range of behavioral things like, you know, not really making change for someone they don't know. They don't like to lend things to neighbors they don't know too well. One of my favorite items, we fielded this in the Middle East. A good negotiator doesn't just get the food in the bowl, but the bowl itself. Now here, they don't agree with this. And it's important. The reason why I put this in is these people do have a pretty sharp sense of moral responsibility. So they're not, no, if you go for the bowl too, that is a moral failure. Whereas your more excitement-seeking crowd, they're gonna take that bowl too. So let's not confuse that just because people have a lot of rah-rah on certain kinds of issues, including green, that they're morally superior. They may not be. And then also, here's where you see, I'm just giving you a couple examples, where they're not getting on the bandwagon of green attitudes. Here's where they look on green. Our data partner, MRI, Large Probability Survey of America, asked the question, being in tune with nature, fitting into nature, is this important? No, it's not important, they say. So, and a couple of the other green ones, they're also running very negative. And they're not willing to talk with their doctor about increases in, for example, asthma or allergies due to bad air, not willing to urge politicians to prepare my community. These are the kinds of things they say on surveys. So an important lesson here is you want to always try to go a little bit beyond just the responses that people give to specific items to see what psychology is lurking behind. So folks, that is the ungreen. My talk has been about the ungreen and how you might be able to warm up the few strong ties crowd. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheri, spectacular. I love the deep psychology stuff. How much time do we have left here?
11 minutes.
11 minutes. Can you do 5?
I can do 5.
Okay, please.
Because I'm not doing me. Hello, I'm Ed Maybach, the George Mason University Program on Climate Change Communications. And Ed works very closely with Dr. Tony Leibowitz at the Yale Project on Climate Change Communication. And I'm working very closely with both of them right now on a climate messaging project where we've hired a bunch of creative people and are working on exactly how do you describe climate change, how do you visualize it so there's an image in people's brains, we don't even have that, how do you explain how to solve it. And we're going to come up with a bunch of different creative ways about how to express all this, and then we're going to hire researchers to test it, and we will then make available to the whole community what we discover works, and hopefully then we will also raise the money to do the bigger campaign to deliver these tested, proven messages repetitively to the target audiences for them. So hopefully we'll get to do that. So what Ed wanted to talk about today is some of the recent research findings that he and Yale have found together. So there's good news. 70% of Americans now accept that climate change is happening, but there's bad news. As I said, only 48% of them believe it's us. So more people now see that the climate is changing, not enough of them understand that it's man-made. Most Americans are worried, 58%, but they tend to see it as a distant threat, distant in space, not here, distant in time, not now, and distant in species, not us. And this is a big problem in environmental messaging, which is we make it sound to people like we're concerned about the Earth and the planet and critters and not them. That's very backwards. You know, the Earth will be fine. We just won't be on it. So, thanks in part to the Pope, there has been a big increase in the number of Americans who see climate change as a moral issue, a poverty and a social justice issue. These numbers nearly doubled in the past year. Hooray for the Pope. So there remains a large acceptance and trust and science gap between liberals and conservative, but there has been nearly a 20 percentage point rise in climate change acceptance among conservative Republicans over the last 2 years, from 28 to 47%. That's terrific, and that's also partly because of the Pope. So let's see. People believe if we address climate change, as you've seen from Celinda, mostly good things will happen. There is very strong support for climate solutions, funding more research into renewable energy, providing tax rebates for people who purchase efficient vehicles or solar, regulating carbon dioxide as a pollutant, requiring fossil fuel companies to pay a tax and use that to reduce other taxes or rebate to the public. Republican pollsters have shown strong support among conservative Republicans for rooftop solar, net metering, expanded government clean energy, R&D, clean energy portfolio standards. So this is all very good news that should inform any campaign. So the problem, of course, is that we're mostly talking to ourselves. The budgets of the big environmental groups, and they do a lot of fantastic work, but the degree of their budget devoted to communications is about 1%, sometimes less. So you have big environmental groups who do tremendous research and policy and litigation and essential work, but they'll have a $150 million budget and spend maybe $1 million or $2 million on communicating to the public, and most of that's for fundraising. So there's a giant gap. We really do have the knowledge of what to do, and we could do it, and I hope we won't wait too much longer. Okay, 5 minutes.
Okay, that was spectacular, guys. I think, one of the things that strikes me about all this is that, the deep understanding of people that comes from Cheri and SBI, and then trying to really get messages from people and really understand where that Celinda does. David's earlier comments about trying to use more media, engage us all more broadly, I think. And then our strategies of trying to go to people where they are, at their churches, at their school, in large scale, to get the credibility and scale and leverage you need to really connect with people. It strikes me that they're all very synergistic things, that we're not talking about different things. We only have about 4 or 5 minutes left, so I think I'd love to do closing comments and then do questions, but I think let's do questions first and let these people jump in with a couple things because there's so many hands
Tell
up.
us who you are.
Okay, we'll start with you. Right?
Yes. Do you want to use the microphone?
We don't have time.
My name's Randy McNamara. I'm with Citizens Climate Lobby.
Sure.
And my question, when I listened to what you're saying, David, that you got the possibility of communicating broadly, and what's missing is the financing to carry out that marketing campaign. What have you done to approach a billionaire to fund it?
More than I can tell you.
More than he can tell you.
I would say that in general, I find that raising money for communications is hard. Raising money for policy work, reports, studies, polling, opening offices, hiring staff is much easier than raising money for communications campaigns.
Well, if Trump can take over the political system by his behavior, certainly we could put together a marketing plan that could alter the world.
Yeah, and one of them is, in my opinion, Citizens Climate Lobby's proposal, which I believe is the proposal we should all gather behind, which is put a price on carbon and give all the money back to the people equally. And I think without that, we'll never get a carbon price, because you can't expect to raise people's food and energy costs and not give them help with that. Anybody that thinks you can pass a carbon price with a purely inside baseball game is just deluding themselves, in my opinion.
Somebody else. Okay.
So, yeah, my name's Jeff Greenfield, and a quick question. The fascinating stuff about the negatives and the naysayers, we're actually trying to get them involved in the Midwest in solar. Is it safe or dangerous to try to go at them with an anti-utility message, or do they have these anti-utility suspicions and feelings that we could use to kind of sell solar and get solar into the...
That's a great question. What's the substance of the negative? In other words, what would be the hurdle or the frustration that you would address?
Those darn utilities.
You need something more specific. Yeah.
Who likes utilities?
More specific.
I mean, one of the things that we've tested, like in Illinois, it depends a little. There are places that like their utilities, although there are few and far between. There are a lot of people who don't, and the attorneys generals are a great ally in this, because one of the things that happens if the attorneys generals come in and sue the utilities for price gouging, then you can come in behind them, and it really helps to characterize the utilities in that more specific way that you're talking about. People also, one of the other things that really helps is to tie. Utilities make a lot of political contributions, and tying them to, accusing them of being CEOs, and also tying them to the political contributions. If you're a big business, you're suspect enough. If you're a big business involved in politics, you're really suspect.
Okay, couple
Those
more.
are some ideas for
The people with the
specifics.
microphones will give you, oh, okay, you go first.
No, it's exactly
Yes,
the point.
you know, I use
Who are
a
you?
lot. I'm Rod Richardson. I'm with the Grace Richardson Fund. I'm your token conservative here today. But, well, a couple of others here. But, you know, I wanted to say that I use a lot of the messaging tools and the messages that you use to communicate to conservatives. You know, that also applies to evangelicals and a lot of groups,
Yeah.
too. And your messaging works very well with people who are non-political. But
Right.
when you're talking to conservatives,
Yeah.
you really need to have a conservative policy, because you're talking
Yeah.
about the benefits. So, you know, I talked on Monday about, you know, the fact that grid parity and the advent of unsubsidized profitability means there's a new policy tool that you can use. Tax cuts, clean up, straight up Reagan tax cuts applied to climate change. Now that is not just an economic policy tool, it's a messaging opportunity. It's a particularly strong messaging opportunity that hits everything you guys are talking about.
Yeah, that's
Because,
great.
you know, for you, you know, talking to the evangelicals, well, there is a historical correlation, an alliance between the supply-siders and the Reaganomics crowd and the evangelicals that you can glom on. If you're talking about tax cuts, you know, here's a gentleman who's an evangelical, really likes the idea, sells well with him.
Go Mitch.
You know, so we got, you know, you know, at this conference I have Conserve America and the Rocky Mountain Institute, who are
Yeah.
both interested in working
Smart.
on this idea. You know, when you're talking about Joe Sixpack, you know, forget about trying to make Joe Sixpack green. He's interested in cheap. Okay, he wants cheap. So you talk about tax cuts, you're talking about driving down the price of energy. You're talking about cheap energy. I'll tell you, you know, you're saying that pollution polls well among people, clean polls well. Well, I'll tell you, cheap polls much better. So you want to tie that cheap to it.
Okay,
and the
that's
tax
great.
cuts.
We're
So
basically out of time right now.
I want to just ask whether that messaging might apply and help
Well,
you.
we're out of time right now. The guy is yelling at me. So let's have a big round of applause for all these people. I think a lot of good lessons here. Thank you very much.